ייגמר לעולם. החול והים, רשרוש של המים, ברק השמיים, תפילת האדם. החול והים, רשרוש של המים, ברק השמיים, תפילת האדם. Oh God, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart.
Today is October 7th, and as we all know, we are marking the 2-year anniversary of the terrible massacre in Israel 2 years ago, and the terrible, devastating war that has transpired ever since. I think all of us are eagerly watching the news. There seem to be glimmers of hope that the hostages may be released, that the war may come to an end. We will see how that plays out in the days and weeks ahead. But tonight we are honoring the memories of all of those innocents who died on that day and since that time. And I want to read a poem, not a sort of a prayer poem for the people of Israel, for the state of Israel, and that I think does a good job of capturing how a lot of us are feeling on this evening. It's called a prayer for the state of Israel. Avinu Shebashamayim, sovereign of all the world, shield Israel beneath your protective presence. May all the inhabitants of Israel know physical safety. May they find the comfort of community as they grieve together. May they experience a renewed love for their country and its people. Guide Israel's leaders as they balance the necessity of safety and security with the suffering of the innocent. May they act wisely with determination and deliberation. Implant within Israel's citizens compassion, strength, and resolve. May they be nourished by our love and support. Our prayers are linked with the prayers of countless others as we remember your ancient promise from the book of 2 Samuel. I will establish a home for my people Israel and will plant them firm so that they shall dwell secure and shall tremble no more. I will give you safety from your enemies. At this time of danger and grief, may we have the audacity to pray for peace, just as our ancestors have done each time they were threatened and terrorized. Natata Shalom Ba'aretz. We pray that the people of Israel find wholeness and know tranquility. We pray for shalom in the land we love. I'd like us all to rise for the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah, be'alma divra chirete v'yamlich malchute, b'chayechon v'yomechon v'chaye decho Beit Yisrael, b'agala uvizman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'alam ulamei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'tadar v'taleh v'talal shmei dekudsha barichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shmaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the source of peace grant peace to all those in mourning and comfort to all those who are bereaved, both here and especially in Israel. And let us all say, amen. Please be seated. So as you have heard me say countless times over the last several years, I think one of the best ways to fight against anti-Semitism is to live committed and robust Jewish lives by observing our holidays, by supporting our institutions, by standing up and being loud and proud about being a Jew in community. And you're all doing that this evening, and I commend you for that. So I can't think of too many other better ways on an October 7th commemoration than to talk about Israel and the history of Israel. And we are so lucky tonight to have one of our newer members, Effie Lubliner, who's going to talk about Israel. Effie and Shira literally just got back from visiting family in Berlin yesterday. I think, Effie, you're working on 3 hours of sleep, something like that. Not much. So we're so grateful that you're going to talk to us tonight. They were in Berlin to greet their newest grandchild, a granddaughter, whose name is Zelda. So that's where they were, and they're back, and we're lucky to have Effie tonight. Effie, as many of you know, in a short period of time has made himself, as has Shira, very well known and very well respected in this community. As an Israeli, he has a unique perspective that a lot of us don't have, who did not grow up in Israel. And Effie has spoken about Israel and the history of Israel at many communities and at many gatherings in the Bay Area over the past years. So Effie, I'm going to invite you to come up, and we will have some time for questions at the end. And why don't you just speak right there?
Erev Tov. If I fall asleep, you know why. What you will not hear tonight is a political lecture. You're going to hear a lot about Israel. And those of you who do not know, at the end of the evening, there is a test. You'll have to remember at least 5 dates of the ones I will mention. But we are going to go back, believe it or not, quite a few years. I don't have to tell you about biblical times. You're learning those all your lives, every Shabbat. But you do not know what happens thereafter. You know a little bit about Babylonia. You know a little bit about the return from the first temple. And then you know a little bit about the Roman area. And you may know a little bit about the Arab invasion of the area. And you may know a little bit about the Crusades around the 1200s. And you may know a little bit about the Mamluks, probably nothing. And you will know quite a bit, maybe, about the Ottoman Empire. I will start with the Ottoman Empire because, believe it or not, they controlled the entire area, and I mean the entire Middle East, for 400 years. They were there from 1516 till 1917, the Turkish Empire, the Ottoman Empire. But that's not where our story begins. Our story begins, surprisingly so, with a trial in France, an anti-Semitic trial of a fellow by the name of Dreyfus, Alfred Dreyfus. Why do I start in 1894, when he was convicted, when he did absolutely nothing wrong? It was totally anti-Semitism, no question ifs or buts, but guess what happened there? A fella who was also a journalist had the name of Herzl. And if you know about Herzl, you know that he was a reporter, during the trial. And that's what got him going. Now, let me go back a little bit. 1880 to 2005 was the first Aliyah. If those of you don't know what Aliyah means going up. The first immigration to Israel. But guys, it was only 25,000 people. That's it, the first Aliyah. More important was what happened in Basel, Switzerland. Because 1897 was the first Zionist convention. Herzl was basically in charge. And he was the one who created it. But what happened in the Dreyfus case is something that we just learned, Shira and I, the other day. We happened to be in Potsdam, and we went to see a wonderful exhibit of 100 paintings of a fellow Jew. Camille Pissarro. Those of you who know anything about painting, you know the name Camille Pissarro. He was Jewish. And Camille Pissarro was, along with Émile Zola, a French non-Jew, who came with the eye accused and exposed what happened in the Dreyfus trial. And he was not Jewish. He was then later on probably murdered. Nobody knows for sure. But Émile Zola probably was murdered because of the Dreyfus trial. And because he came up against the army and against the people in control. Amazing story. Check it out. Émile Zola, a major literate, a major writer, author, a major journalist, came against the grain. And that's what happened. But let's go to 1897. First Zionist organization, meeting, convention, Congress in Basel. 208 delegates were there from 17 countries, European countries only, okay? And that's where Herzl put the coin, the wording, if you will it, it is not a dream. And when I grew up in Israel, this was on every school, a big letter, Im tirtzu ein zu agada. If you will it, it is not a legend. It's like the first thing you see when you go into the classroom is that saying. Well, how many people lived in Israel in that time? Now, when I say Israel, be careful. Remember, there is no Israel. 400 years of Ottoman Empire, Jordan, Israel, Lebanon, Syria, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, all the same. There was no independent countries there. No such thing. Ottoman Empire, right? So what is Israel? Well, people refer to Israel usually from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean. If you know the way Israel looks, okay? That's what it was. Around 600,000 people lived in the land at that time. Who were they? Nobody for sure knows, but the majority, no question about it, were Arabs. Did they call themselves Palestinians? No. They were just like the Arabs in Jordan, like the Arabs in Syria, or any other Arab area that controlled when the big Arab invasion took over years ago, 600-700, you know, that's when they got there, but very few survived in Israel. And where did they live? Mostly in the hilly sides, not in the flat area, which is now consists of the majority of people living in Israel proper. There was no Tel Aviv. Yeah, there was Jaffa. Okay, there was Ashdod. There was Ashkelon. There was Haifa. There was Acres. All along the water, but that's not where they lived. They lived mostly in the mountains in what I would call city-states. Every village had a muhtar. Muhtar is the person in charge, the head family. But there was no government, there was no election, there was no such thing. Never existed. Democracy? What are you talking about? What democracy? What is democracy? They haven't heard of that word. Definitely not under the Ottoman Empire. 1917 comes and they made a mistake. The Turks made a mistake. They joined with the wrong side. And guess what happened then? Britain, France, took over the entire area. Britain took the southern side. France took Lebanon, Syria, Iraq. That was France. It was basically divided amongst the superpowers at the time. But there was no election. Nobody was in charge. And then in 1917, England received the mandate from the United Nations to run what we call now Israel, all the way to including Jordan, etc., etc. They were all in control of that area. What happens around 48, let's talk about number again. From 600,000 or so that were there at the beginning of the century, almost 10,000 were Jews. Mind you, there has never been a day in the history of this area that there were no Jews in the land of Israel. There were always some, maybe very few, but there were always some, especially in Jerusalem, definitely so. But very few. Majority were Arabs, no question about it. Balfour Declaration, 1917. Balfour, English fella, recognized the right of the Jews to have their own land. In a little note. We prefer not to say or not to tell, but I will tell you the truth. If you check out the history, you'll find out that a couple of years later, it was rescinded. But nobody talks about it. Definitely not our side. But that's what he did. Until 48, the British people ruled over the land of Israel, etc., etc., etc. Okay, and then what happens? UN partition plan in 1947. Two-state solution. Wow, that sounds familiar. Two-state solution. Ben-Gurion was having a tremendous difficult time convincing his fellow members of the Haganah to accept it. And the land was tiny. If you look at the map of the partition, my God, it was tiny. Everybody here has been to the Galilee, not under Israel. It was part of the Palestinian state. Isn't this amazing? You look at the map of 48 separation, you will not recognize it. You will not recognize Israel in it. But then happened what happened again and again throughout history. It was rejected by the Arab side. So who came to the war in 1948? 5 nations. Not the Palestinians. They were not a nation. They were villages, communities. In Jaffa there was a community. In Jerusalem there was a community. But there was no one major power controlling or elected. They joined 5 Arab nations: Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Jordan, Egypt. And they invaded Israel in 48. How many months do you think was the War of Independence? I know that while I was born, it was still going on. See, I was born 9 months after the state was created. So I'm 1949, March. Take 9 months back and you will find the beginning of the state of Israel in 48. 14 months took for the War of Independence to take place. It was not an easy war. And it was done in several stages. Very few people are aware of that. They think it was just a war. No. Stages, different areas, different time. At the end became the ceasefire agreement. It was not a peace agreement. Everybody has to understand that a ceasefire, all it means, ceasing fire. It's not a peace. It was never a peace agreement at that time, just a ceasefire. Population, 1948, you wouldn't guess. But something very funny happened at the beginning of the 20th century. At the same time that many Jews came to Israel, also many non-Jews came to Israel for a very simple reason. Living, place where we were able to find work. With the 500,000 Jews around the War of Independence, about 1 million Arabs in the land, the entire land of Israel. I'm not including Jordan. Just as I said, from the river to the sea. Okay? Important to remember those numbers, because when people are talking about stuff, what are you talking about? But the numbers are important and the dates are important. So, a little quiet till 1956, at which many of my friends say, you don't talk about that. You shouldn't talk about that. The Sinai campaign in 1956. Not a good idea, because it was basically France and England convincing Israel to join them because they want to take over again the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal was under British and French control. Abdul Nasser, the Egyptian man in charge, dictator, not a nice guy, but he decided to kick the French and the British out of control of the Suez Canal. Whoa, 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 whoa. Everybody knows where the Suez Canal is, I hope. But if you control the Suez Canal, you control all the trade between the East and the West. That's the only way out, unless you want to go all around Africa. So Suez Canal was extremely important, and Israel joined them. Didn't last much time. After they took Israel took the entire Sinai Peninsula, everything had to be returned because the world did not stand for that war. The next one was far more important to us, to all of us, which is the 67 war. Happened to be in high school, 67 war. I just finished cleaning up all the shelters in my high school in Tel Aviv and did not go to the army till about 2-3 months later. I was in the army in August of 1967. That's after the war was over, 6-day war. I'm sure of at least that you all heard of, okay? And it was a miracle war, mostly fought with, believe it or not, French. And that was a big betrayal of France to Israel, when suddenly in the middle of the war, they stopped sending any parts for the Mirage planes, which were extremely critical in the wind of the 67 war. I'll never forgive France for what they did, and it was total treason in the middle of a war. It was a short war, guys, 6 days. It's incredible. You know how much land was taken in the 6 days? And King Hussein made one mistake. He listened to Nasser. And Nasser told him to come join me in the war. I'm winning against the Israelis. He joined, he lost the West Bank. And that's what happened in 67. And then Syria lost the Golan Heights. And of course, Egypt lost the Sinai Peninsula. And suddenly it became Israel far larger than it's ever been, not even in biblical time. If you check history of the land of Israel, even if you read the Bible, oh my God, and you know how much I love the Bible, but in the Bible itself, God help you if you can tell me what is exactly the border of the state of Israel. It's impossible. It depends on which book you read. Every book has a different place of where the border is? I don't know. That's what I always ask Orthodox Jews. So what is the borders of Israel? You don't, because which borders are you referring to? In which book? Six-Day War. And then came 1973, a horrible war, the Yom Kippur War. Nobody expected that. In many, many ways, it was a total failure of Israeli intelligence at the time. Golda Meir was the prime minister, for those of you who don't remember her. Not one of my favorite persons. But anyway, it was a horrible war, many casualties. Dear friend of mine died during that war, in the Six-Day War. I mean, in 73. I was not there. I was in the United States already. And then the next step after that is 1978, the Camp David Accord and the peace with Egypt. I think that Sadat was extremely smart, much smarter than Begin, even though I thought Begin was a very smart man. He didn't want to take back the Gaza Strip. What a smart, smart man. He will take the Sinai Peninsula back, and he will give you a written peace. But don't give me those Palestinians in Gaza. Please don't. And that's what happened. And that was the first peace agreement, Egypt and Israel. 1982, Lebanon War. I mean, every time you look, you cannot go a few years by without a war. 1987 to 1993, the first Intifada. You must have heard of that. Remember the buses and all of that stuff? The bombing? Horrible, horrible stories. 1993, the Oslo Accords. PLO controls parts of the West Bank, not the entire part, not the entire West Bank, but part of the West Bank was given to the PLO. And in 1994, a peace agreement with Jordan, Prime Minister Rabin, if you recall, signing the thing in the desert with King Hussein. By the way, as a side note, Jordan is a total creation of British rule. You know why King Abdullah got Jordan? Because he lost the war against the Saudis in Saudi Arabia to control the high places for the Muslim in Mecca and Medina. He lost the war and got Jordan from the British. No other reason. And he was a Bedouin. His son is currently the king. Okay? But he failed, and he got the land. Rabin was assassinated in 1995. I know that some Israelis will forgive this guy for what he did. Not Rabin, the guy who killed him. I will never forgive him. 2000 and 2005, second Intifada. More killing, more murders. And then came 2005 and came the Gaza disengagement. I am trying not to state my political stand, though I think that you can by now guess where I stand. If you don't, then... But I'm not ashamed of it. I'm very proud of it. But the disengagement in Gaza by Sharon was, in my book, one of a major mistakes that Israel has ever done. To go out with no agreement, to leave a vacuum behind you, to have nothing to control and make sure that things are done properly, just because you want to get out of there, I thought it was a major, major failure. 2007, Hamas takes over Gaza. Now, those of you who do not know or may not have heard, have anybody here heard of a prime minister by the name of Shamir? Guess what, guys? Shamir created Hamas. Do you know why he created Hamas? Very simple. He didn't want the PLO to be the only power over the Palestinian. So they had to create a power against them. So they will fight all the time, which they exactly did. And Hamas was created. Shamir is the one. By the way, everything I'm saying check it out. Please, please, please. And if I say something that is wrong, come to me and say, Effie, you were wrong. Please, please do. I did a lot of research. But find it and take it try to go to neutral places. Don't go to an Arab source or an Israeli source. Go to neutral areas and you can find them. And get the data. Not who is to blame, but the data, what happened. (2008 to 2021) wars with Hamas, again and again and again and again, incursions from Gaza. Non-stop. 2020, the Abraham Accords, which I call the money accords, because in my book, the only reason for those accords was money. Everything generated by money interest on both sides. And 2 years ago today, Hamas-Gaza war. No other war in Israel has taken 2 years. As I mentioned before, War of Independence, which was long, 14 months, not 2 years. Shira just mentioned to me yesterday, this war, these 2 years, forget about the horrible, horrible killing down on that one day. Another 1,200 Israeli soldiers died over the last 2 years. Where are we now? 3,000, 4,000? But you know what nobody is talking about? And when I meet my Israeli friends, it's not the dead. It's those who were injured and have to live with it for the rest of their lives. Do you know how many there are? I don't want to mention thousands. They will have to live like this for the rest of their lives. And they are alive. They are not dead. When you are dead, you're dead. But when you are alive and you don't have a hand or a leg or an eye or whatever it is that you were injured, and you cannot create a family or work or become productive, those are the people that I feel so bad about, the one who survived. So now I gave you some history, and the history has one big word all over it. Again and again and again, the word is war. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. The other day, Prime Minister Bibi mentioned that we have no choice but to become like Sparta. I don't know if you know what he was referring to, but there were two types of Greek rulers, in Athens and in Sparta. Athens were the sophisticated, educated. Sparta were the fighters. Always fighting. Power, power, power. And it's true, some of my friends tell me all the time, hey, we won the war. Whoever wins the war gets the spoils. Okay, till the next war, and the next war, and the next war. You have any guarantees? The other thing that complicates the entire situation in Israel is the tremendous in a way similar to the United States, but in a way very different. Variety of people. You have over there, between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean, as of we speak right now, approximately 10 million people. Approximately. You know there are more non-Jews than Jews in this area? Do you know that? Check it out. More, I'm not saying a lot more, but more non-Jews than Jews. But look at the mix. Even within us, the Jews, Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox, modern Orthodox, total chofshi, in other words, totally not religious at all, mishmash of people. Within the Arabs, same story. Druze, quite a few. Golan Heights, many Druze. The Negev, south, many Druze. Bedouins, all over the place. They don't do Bedouin the way their grandparents used to be. You know what Bedouins are, if anybody doesn't know? Bedouins are those nomad people that keep on moving from place to place. Not in Israel. They find a spot and they stay there. They stay in one spot. So all of this makes life very, very complicated. So people sometimes ask me, so what do you think, Effie, will happen? And I say, I wish I knew, I do not know. But I think of only one thing, and that's my philosophy, and I will end with this and allow you guys to ask me questions. I believe that no nation on earth can be controlling another people for a long time without problems. Look around the world. Wherever there is religion involved and land, there is war. Ireland, Afghanistan, Israel. And I don't see how this happens. I want Israel to stay Jewish. That was always my philosophy. A Jewish state for the Jewish people. Therefore, I always believed in separation. And now you know the rest of the story. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Effie?
Effie, could you talk about the history of the West Bank? I'm very confused about where the...
Okay, let's go to biblical time. There is the tribe of Judah, which is right now what's called Judea. In the middle there is Jerusalem. Guess what? Who controlled the area of Jerusalem? You wouldn't believe it. No, in biblical time. It was given to them as the tribe. The tribe that took it over was Benjamin. Tiny little tribe. The first king of Israel, Saul, was from the tribe of Benjamin. Very, very weak tribe that was just decimated and suddenly got a king. Okay? Then there is Ephraim and half of Manasseh, which controls Samaria. Okay? That's the West Bank. The hilly side overlooking the Jordan River in one side and overlooking the Shfela, what we call the Shfela, which is the straight land, you know, the empty land, which goes towards the Mediterranean. So the West Bank was under the control of King Hussein after 48. They were able to control most of Jerusalem, Jordan, after 48, and they were controlling the entire West Bank. Okay? And it was weird because he was also became the protector of Jerusalem, the title for King Hussein of Jordan. And they would have had it still to date had he not got into war in 67. He screwed up. He went to war, he made a mistake. He lost the West Bank, he lost Jerusalem, and here you go. One more thing that many people do not know. If you talk to a Muslim Ask him to do a very simple thing for you. Tell him, have you read the Quran? Yes, you did? You know the Quran? Oh, wonderful. Can you show me in the Quran where it says the word Jerusalem? It's not there. How many times the name Jerusalem appears in the Bible? What do we say every Passover, forever and ever and ever and ever? Next year in Jerusalem. If we mean it, we don't mean a different story. But that's what we say, next year in Jerusalem. Why? What became the capital of Israel? King David. Jerusalem. He won Jerusalem. And that's how it became basically the center. His son, Solomon, who many people call Solomon the Wise, but I don't, built the first temple in Jerusalem. Solomon. But then he made a major mistake. He had two sons, and he couldn't decide which son is going to follow him. And there was the war. And there was a separation between Judea and the 10 tribes. Or not even 10 tribes, because 2.5 were on the other side of the Jordan. Even before they got into Israel, Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh stayed in the other side of the Jordan River. So basically, 10 tribes there, and then they lost to the Assyrians and were kicked out. A few years later, Judea lost to Babylon and were taken over to them. But the West Bank itself, I served in the West Bank. Okay, that's where I was in the army. I was in the West Bank. I knew it quite well. Okay? Along the river, I knew it extremely well over there. But that is the Judea and Samaria. But do you have any specific question about Judea and Samaria? It's very hilly. Some water, not extremely, there are no big rivers going through it. Water has always been a problem in Israel, not anymore, by the way, guys. If anybody tells you that there is a problem of water in Israel today, tell them, hey, that's old news. Israel is making more water to drink than anyone else via desalination. It's incredible what they've done through desalination in Israel. Be proud of Israel. I'm very proud of Israel. I don't like what's going on, but love my country? No question about it.
Other questions or comments?
Thanks, Ephraim. I appreciate it. And I call him
Ephraim, huh?
because that's also my Hebrew name, is Ephraim. This is not so much historical as it is perhaps political. But, here we are commemorating October 7. Had Netanyahu not pulled the troops out of southern Israel and put them in the West Bank, we wouldn't be here, because I believe that the invaders would have been repelled. 1,200 people would not have lost their lives. That massacre wouldn't have happened, and we wouldn't have been in the terrible straits that we're in now, where the whole world is just falling apart and convoluting. So my question is specifically, talk about it however you wish, but part of my question is, to what extent are the people of Israel holding Netanyahu responsible for this horrible military decision that caused all these problems that we're encountering?
It depends. If you are part of the ultra-Orthodox, if you are part of the religious kippot srugot, which you would call the Mizrahi, what would you call kippot srugot?
Eastern Orthodox.
Yeah, but they are the ones who serve a lot in the army. They are the fighters. Most of the settlers are the knitted kippot, okay? And I tell you, he didn't make the mistake. The problem was, under him, the guy in charge took a whole battalion to be in the West Bank to celebrate Simchat Torah, that's what they did, to protect some few hundreds celebrating Simchat Torah in the West Bank. So he brought them over from Gaza. What a major mistake. Horrible mistake. How many people died because of that? How many people died because of that mistake? But nobody expected it. Again, failure of intelligence.
Anybody else? And it's kind of interesting because the Mossad and Israeli military intelligence has this reputation, and I think some of it is deserved, for being so effective and methodical. And yet, 1973, 2 years ago, there have been some major failures. in
Absolute
intelligence.
failure. It's really, to me, it's amazing what happened over there. I don't understand. There is a word in Hebrew, I don't know how you would translate it into English, sha'ananut. How would you translate sha'ananut to English? Sha'ananut. Complacent? I think a lot of it was complacency. I really do. I do not know for sure. Again, by the way, guys, I'm not a historian. I love history. I'm not a historian, but you're more than welcome. Really, really. And I really mean it. If I made mistakes, I'd love to know. I'd love to know. Because all of us make mistakes all the time. And I like to be corrected. I have no problem with coming and saying, Effie was wrong. I have no problem with that at all. But the key for you to remember is that it's a sad day. Thousands of our brothers have died. Could they have been spared? I believe so. Are you going to blame Netanyahu? I will leave it up to you. I know what I would do. I only voted in Israel twice. When I was in the army, and in 98, when my wife couldn't believe it, but I spent several $1,000s at the time to fly to Israel to kick him out, and we were successful. We kicked him out for a very short time, unfortunately. And I went and voted for Barak at the time, and I was really very proud of that. I especially flew to Israel just to get this guy out of there. So maybe I had the foresight. I don't know.
Any final question? Larry, we'll give you the last word.
Thanks. In watching the conduct of this war, this criticism, we hear this criticism all the time that Israel fails in the information war, that it doesn't tell its story. And then you dig deeper to try and find out why that is. And what I've heard is, in the Israeli psyche, explaining is almost having to justify your existence, which they don't feel like they have to do. But we know with modern information technology, we know how good Hamas has been with propaganda and social media. Can you talk a little bit about the other half of the war, the information war, and your perspective on where Israel is on that?
Israel made several major mistakes in this war. I said from day one, when I heard what happened and what's going on, and I heard about the invasion into Gaza and so on, I said, guys, we are known all over the world that where there is a crisis, the first ones to show when there is an earthquake or lava flows or some major, who comes in first? The Israeli units to take care of the injured and the sick. We should have done the same in Gaza. Not in Gaza, by Gaza. And when somebody gets hurt, bring him in for especially the women, children, stuff like that. Do you know what kind of a propaganda it would have been in our favor to show the humanity? To show some humanity towards the people who did not fight? The kids? Would have been fantastic. They didn't do it.
Why do you think that did not
Because I really believe, and I really don't want to talk too much politics. I try not to. That was not the intent of today's lecture. Totally, as you notice, I tried to stay away from politics as much as I possibly can. You have I would say about 30 to 35 maybe percent of Israeli population that will go right-wing no matter what. No matter what. It doesn't matter what. Kill, 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 kill. There are some in the middle, and the left now for the last 2 years, down, down, down. Because people remember, people were murdered. It's very tough to fight against people who were murdered, some of which your family, friends. My son went against my wife's will, and with kind of, not exactly support, but I supported his decision, and he went and served 3 years in the Israeli army. He didn't have to. He was born in the United States. He was not an Israeli. He didn't have to go to Israel. He went and served 3 years in the Israeli army. And he served in 3 of the worst positions you can think of. In the Hermon, where he almost lost a part of his foot, in the West Bank, and in Gaza. 3 places he served, okay? But he wanted to do it. He wanted to do it. He knew I did it, so he wanted to do it. But I don't support wars. I cannot support wars. I know one more thing, and I'm going to end with this. Some of you may not know, my family also suffered from murder. My eldest cousin is Yehuda Pearl. Yehuda Pearl's son was Daniel Pearl, the slain reporter, journalist for the Wall Street Journal. That's my cousin's son, okay? So we have things close to us. Ilan, my son, had it in his mind all the time about Daniel passing. And he decided to go and fight and be there, help. I don't know if he would go today. Do not know. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Effie. Thank you. It's not easy, especially on the second anniversary of October 7th, even though we're a congregation, to come up here, not a professional historian, but an Israeli and a member of the community, and just talk in a very clear, nonpartisan way, which is not easy, about Israel. Israel is a very beautiful, very flawed country, much like ours, probably much like any country in the world, and we just hope and pray that this glimmer of hope right now pays off, and if the Gaza war finally ends and the hostages are returned, then they move on to the next thing, and what happens with the West Bank. And Effie did a good job, hopefully, addressing your question, Kathleen, about, what happened once Israel absorbed the West Bank in 1967, and what do we do now that the population is divided almost in half between Jewish, Israeli, and Palestinian, and how can you possibly have a two-state solution, if that's what you believe in, at this point when there are 600,000 Israelis who've built settlements and or who live in that same area. So it's almost an intractable problem, but people keep trying and trying and trying, and hopefully in our lifetime we'll see some kind of resolution and peace. So we're going to end with the singing of Israel's national anthem, Hatikva, and if you would please rise for that.
Kolur baleva enima nefesh Yehudi homiya ufate mizrach kadima ayin letzion Sophia Ulo avda tikvateinu Atik Rotapayim Liotam Choshi Be'artzeinu Eretz Zion Yerushalayim דם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון ירושלים.
Thank you again, Effie. Chag Sameach. Happy Sukkot to everyone. We hope to see you later in the week. Have a good night.